Greetings, hello, and welcome everyone to the first major update for Age of Mythology Retold. We're going to dive into what the major points of this update are. I'm going to post a link to the patch notes in the video description for you to check it out. TLDR, I think this is overall a pretty good patch. There are a couple of head-scratching moves that I'll get to later on here, but I think overall this is going to be really important for most of the issues that many of you have been reporting since the launch of AOM Retold. Let's go ahead and dive in to what's changing in this latest patch. So this is for update 17.27932. That's a mouthful of a number. Let's go ahead and get started. Stability and performance. They're fixing the most commonly experienced crashes that are happening, the situations that would lead to an out-of-sync state. I've noticed that a couple of times myself. Matches will get out of sync. Minor performance improvements. They say many other minor fixes and improvements with more to come with your feedback. This is the first head-scratching one. The game is now playable in the Microsoft Store if you have a Rogue Ally, Legion Go, and when using a wireless Xbox 360 controller. I didn't even know that you could use a wireless Xbox 360 controller on PC. I don't know if you need like a specific dongle. I know with Xbox One, I play wirelessly with the dongle, but that's a head-scratching one to me. I guess it was really easy for them to implement. I guess my question is do they have the telemetry to even like put in the effort to say like, yeah, there's enough people to where we need to put the work in for the game to support Xbox 360? I mean, that's almost a 20-year-old controller. The 360 came out in 2005. Anyway, I guess that's there for probably the 7 of you who want to use a wireless 360 controller on PC. They fixed some things with achievements and localization. There's also the graphics wood flickering when finishing a match. They fixed that as well. Battle cry sounds are properly played when using boost abilities. I'm not sure what boost abilities are. Maybe that's a skill issue on my part. The technology tree is now accessible from the Learn tab, and minor updates to show how the stats are shown. Sky passages can no longer eject units using a hotkey. I don't know if that's good or bad. I feel like you would want to eject units by using a hotkey in the sky passage. That's the thing with Atlanteans. It's like a teleporter. I think it's really cool. It's almost like Hades' Underworld, more or less, but you can build multiple of them, so I think it's just better. But yeah, maybe there's some sort of issue with that they said you're not going to have that anymore. Some controller improvements. Now, this is a big section here. Big as in like importance. I've not made a dedicated video for this because I know they're going to fix a lot of stuff, but as of right now, in my opinion, playing on a controller, you're at a complete disadvantage to mouse and keyboard, and it's not because of how the controller interacts with units and villager priority, that system, or selecting units and things like that. It's actually like really small stuff that I think overall adds up to like a major downside. I'll give you an example. You can't see the description of relics through Fog of War on a controller, and that's huge. Like, your scout may unveil where the relics are, and if you're on mouse and keyboard, you can just hover your mouse over that relic in Fog of War, and it'll tell you what the buff is. On controller, you can't do that. You can see the description of a relic if you do have line of sight, but again, you need line of sight, so you have to send a unit over to that relic to even know what the change is on a controller. I think that's a major issue. You also can't take relics out of a temple on a controller for some reason. I think that's a little interesting. I was unable to do that when I was doing a video a couple days ago. Nonetheless, there are a lot of other really small things, but let's get into the fixes here. They added additional places to access Xbox profiles. I think that's a controller thing. It's in the controller section. The controller UI will now hide the age up button prompt at the maximum age. I'm assuming that means the Wonder Age. That's technically age 5. It's a building that you do once you get into age 4. I think that's what they mean by maximum age. There's going to be improved visibility of the controller selection marquee over water. I think because of the blue paintbrush over the blue water, it made kind of an issue to see what you're actually selecting there. Various controller UI radial menu improvements. Again, I'm hoping that includes the relic issue that I was talking about, but I'm not sure. Minor contextual improvements for D-pad quick find. Maybe you're having issues selecting units with the D-pad selection tool. I'm not sure. Players can now target units in the Fog of War on controller. Again, I hope that includes relics. I'm not sure. Build menus and gameplay should now properly respond to controller inputs when connected via Bluetooth. I always use my controller plugged in for this game, but for those of you who are on Bluetooth, there's that fix there for you as well. Moving forward to general gameplay fixes, favor is no longer shown in temples for non-Greek players. I don't know what that means. Again, maybe that's a skill issue on my part, but what does that mean, favor is no longer shown in temples? I don't know. That's a head-scratching one for me. Attempting to pick up relics before a temple is built will now show you that a temple is required. I think that's pretty huge. I think that might be that players are trying to pick up relics before a temple is built, and they can't figure out why they can't with a hero unit. You'd need a temple to pick it up. I think that's improvement. Trained units garrison into a gather point target if set to a garrisonable building. There's an improvement there. Villagers ordered to attack move will no longer go to an idle state and become stuck in some situations. I know that this was an issue, villagers using an A move. So you rarely ever need to have your villagers do an attack move. If you're unfamiliar with an attack move, it's different than a regular move. You would attack move. Your villagers or whatever unit you tell to attack move will go in the direction you tell it to go, but it will engage enemy opponents or buildings along the way to the destination. If you do just a regular move, it'll ignore everything until it gets to that destination. That's the difference. And I know villagers, you never want to A move with your villagers because they're just going to die. But in some rare scenarios, like a last resort, you might want to attack move with your villagers. I know they were getting stuck, so that fixes that. When the villager priority system is enabled, site-based commands to build drop-off sites will now correctly construct the buildings. I think what that means is, like, if you're going to a resource and you can tell it to build a building next to it, I think the appropriate building will be constructed there. I'm not actually quite sure about that because I don't really use the villager priority system. There's pathing updates to how units are pathed in some situations. The example they give is when hunting, so I think that's good. This is a nice improvement. The market buy sell commands are now grayed out if you don't have the sufficient resources. So you can't try to buy or sell resources if you don't have the resources required to do that trade. This is one that I've got a few comments on. The immediately auto queue villagers at game start setting. So that's a setting in I think it's the game tab. In my opinion, you should always have this turned on. This is just the game will just train villagers for you for forever until you get to that maximum of 100. I think that you should just do that. There's no real downside to not doing it. It even applies it to your subsequent town centers that you build. Like if you build a second one or a third one, they'll also auto-queue villagers. You had to turn that on, not in a match for some reason. Now you can turn it on in a match. I think that's good. Okay, we're moving on to general balance. Let's go ahead and right into the technologies. They're nerfing on how quickly you advance in age. So the heroic age research time went from 60 to 75 seconds, and the mythic age time went from 90 to 120 seconds. I guess that they're thinking that people are advancing in age too quickly. Maybe people are getting to age 4 faster than they would like. I worry that they're going to try and maybe see they could drag out how long matches are played. One thing that's really appealing to me about AOM games is the length of games played is fairly short. We can wrap up a game in somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes on most of our AoE 4 games. You could take a look at the channel and all the multiplayer games we posted so far. In team games, we play 3s. It's not very long, much shorter than AoE 4. What I worry is they're going to want to see games wrapped up in T2, the second age, the classical age, and maybe that's why they want these age times to be longer, but nonetheless, they change that. They're making town centers a lot better. The accuracy has been increased, the pierce damage has been increased, same with the citadels. I think that's that upgraded one that Egyptians have, and then the building garrison range has been reduced a little bit. So I think looks like overall they do more damage with less range. I hope that town centers don't get overly OP where, it's kind of dumb to attack it with base melee units, kind of like an AoE 4. It's really dumb to attack a town center unless you have just an absurd amount of melee units. but in AOM, I think it's balanced pretty well. They're also, this is pretty funny, they're buffing trees. The wood of trees is being increased from 150 to 200, so if you're short on trees, no longer. Let's move over to the Pantheon changes of all of the major and minor gods. I think for the most part, I'm going to be covering a lot of the major gods here. There are some differences to minor gods and myth units, but again, I want to be respectful of your time. We're starting off with Hades. Hades is one of my favorite major gods. The myth unit bonus that Hades get has been decreased from 20% to 15%. And then the Hades pierce damage upgrade has been reduced from 14 to 12. For Athena, the technology you get for Athena, that's a minor god, that a spearman attack range has been decreased. And then the it's like this bronze leader god power. It's like gives you a bunch of armor. And that's been reduced just slightly. 50% to 45%. They're nerfing Minotaurs. They're increasing the cost, and the Pierce armor has been decreased. We see a lot of people go Minotaurs over the Cyclops as Hades, and Minotaur rushing is kind of nasty. They also want to encourage you to build Cyclopses instead by going Ares, because they're decreasing the cost and they're increasing the armor as well. So they're trying to maybe get them more in line with each other. The Hydra and is that the Skyla? I'm going to slaughter some of these names. I do apologize. They gain additional heads after inflicting the following amounts of damage. And they kind of put this here. They're actually increasing the damage of how often they get the heads. They're a myth unit that gets more heads grown the more damage they do. They're actually increasing that, which I think is good. I've been completely obliterated by these things in the past, where they have like 4 or 5 heads. It's kind of ridiculous. And then lastly, the Chimera hit points has been decreased as well. For general human units for Greeks, the Archer train time has been increased. The Counter Archer, that's that Peltast, the cost has been increased, and the training time has been increased. Let's see, the Counter Infantry rate of attack speed has been slowed down. And a few other smaller changes as well. The Fortress building, the pierce damage has been decreased from 13 to 9. So a lot of nerfs to Greek overall. I don't think there's any buffs besides the Cyclopses. Everything else has been nerfed. Moving on to Egyptians. They're starting with Set. The animals of Set, the hit points has been reduced by 25%. For Ra, the empowerment, Priest and Pharaohs now empowers 70% at the strength of a Pharaoh that's previously 60. So they want to buff Ra when you empower stuff with a Priest. The minor gods, there are some nerfs kind of all around, and a couple of buffs as well. The Spirit of Mat technology, that heal rate has been cut in half. The Eclipse God Power, the duration has been decreased as well. The Plague of Serpents has been decreased. The Locust Swarm now deals 90% damage, minus 90% damage versus allied units in buildings. The Tornado God Power can now properly damage settlements that are being constructed, and the Meteor God Power has been nerfed as well. For the myth units, there are some changes to myth units. Most notably, again, nerfs kind of all around. There are decreased attack, increased cost. The special recharge time for the Scorpion Man has been increased. They really want to make sure that all these things are kind of nerfed, huh? For the Pharaoh, the rate of attack, fire speed, has been sped up. I think, actually, it looks like it has been sped up. I was going to say, is that inverse? But no, it's been sped up from 1.2 to 1. The divine damage from the priest has been decreased. I know a lot of people going mass priest was really good against, like, mass myth units, of course. Chariot archers, their bonus damage versus infantry has been increased, which I thought that's interesting because I found chariot archers kind of OP right now, but they think that, no, it actually needs to be increased. Same with axemen. They've been increased with their bonus damage versus infantry. Finally, the Monuments of Isis, the God Power blocking radius has been increased from 20 to 25, and that healing aura. So if you empower that monument, it'll heal as well. That's been increased accordingly. I thought that's actually kind of ridiculous that they did that. But, again, they must have telemetry that states that, no, it needs to be changed. Moving on to Norse for Freyr. That's that new DLC leader, Freyr. That gift, Freyr's gift, it's a technology. It now grants 10% hit points to all units. It says previously it was just heroes and human soldiers. So I'm assuming that now includes myth units. And I don't know if that includes the Titan or not. It says all units. We'll see. The Golan Bursty can no longer be teleported by Ptah's shifting sands god power, but can still travel through the underworld. How spooky. Jeez, okay. Going on to minor gods, the Asgardian Hill Fort fixed a bug where ox carts were unable to garrison. The favor costs have now been increased by 50 for the flaming weapons. The Walking Woods god power, the number of trees transform has been decreased, but the starting cost has been decreased as well. And then the Rock Giant hit points has been decreased a little bit. Human units, the Portable Ram, the armor's been increased, and the Drekki hit points has been increased as well. For the Hill Fort, the pierce damage has been decreased just a little bit. Moving on to Atlanteans, they're starting off with Oranos or Oranos. I apologize for slaughtering the messaging of the character. But I think this is probably the weakest major god in the entire game. But the bonus now reads as follows. No changes were made. This is just a clarifying text adjustment. So they're just being more clarifying on how you can use the Sky Passage, I guess. The Sky Passage is now built faster. And the Empyrean Speed, that's a technology. The cost has been decreased a little bit. For Gaia, the Economic Guild upgrade cost has been increased from 30 to 35%. There's some minor gods. So the Implosion from Atlas, I love this leader power. That's the one where Cell comes back that I say in videos. It can no longer suck flying units into the Implosion. I think that's a missed opportunity, to be honest with you. I don't like that play call. The Carnivora, that's that giant plant thing. The bonus damage versus villagers has been decreased. I thought that thing was kind of bad, and they made it even worse. The Frontline Heroics technology fixed a bug where the upgrade would not show as applied for infantry heroes, but it was applied. For human units for Atlanteans, they're talking about both hero and regular. It looks like they're increasing how Atlantean human soldiers are really throughout. There's a lot here, but it's most notably the speed has been increased on movement, the armor has been increased, and the damage has been increased as well. So they felt like Atlanteans were lacking. I agree with that. I thought they were kind of the worst of the bunch outside of Kronos, so I'm glad to see that there as well. Moving on from balance to map changes, they are making sure that some of the maps are more appropriate for when you spawn, particularly with resources. With Nomad, now Nomad's a map and not a game mode. That's a big, difference between AoE 4 and this. But Nomad now has starting resources for all Pantheons. They fixed that. It's now, equal. For ranked and quick match pool changes, they removed Mediterranean from the ranked maps, which is good because I think that was a bad move. And then Megalopolis has been added. That's my favorite map in the entire game. That's the one where you're on a hill and you have a rock ring surrounding it to kind of defend it, and there's an entrance and an exit where it slopes down back into the flat terrain that's in between players. I think that's really cool. It's a good defensive map. I'm a big fan of it. Lobbies and multiplayer. Now, there's a lot of issues here with lobbies and multiplayer where I'm very confused on the way they implemented it. So if you're unfamiliar, you can now, in AOM, you would have to, I think you still do, you have to invite everyone before you search. And then after you search, you find a game. After the game is completed, the lobby is disbanded. You have to invite everyone again. And while you're searching, you can't do anything. Otherwise, it'll disband everyone. So if you want to go look at a technology tree, if you want to check friend requests, in-game friend requests, look at the settings, you do any of that, it disbands the entire lobby. And also, you have to, wait for everyone to join, because if you search too quickly after everyone joins, you'll be like out of sync from one another, and only some of you will get into a lobby. It's really confusing, and they need to work on it. But this looks like some steps in that direction. They said game ID URLs have been added to make it easier to join games. This feature is only available for Steam users. Chat messages so no longer have a delay after you send them. They're improved searching for players to invite to games. Reduced time to refresh the multiplayer browser. Improvements to allow switching between custom scenarios and multiplayer lobbies. This one, I don't know why they did this one. And I might spend a minute here talking about this. There's a new option in the settings to opt out of cross-network play. Now, what this is going to do is this is going to split up. If you enable this, you're going to opt out of queuing for both PC and Xbox players. I don't understand why this was put in. The only reason why I can understand this was put in is because people on Xbox feel like they're at such a disadvantage on a controller playing against mouse and keyboard players that they just don't want to do it. But it's cross-network, not cross-input. So you can play, to my understanding, you can play mouse and keyboard on controller, just like how you can in Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 4 on Xbox. So the point I'm getting at is, if you feel like you're on a controller and you're at a disadvantage with mouse and keyboard, opting out of cross-network play isn't going to do anything because people can play on mouse and keyboard on Xbox. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what they should have done instead is say controller players can opt out of cross-input, meaning controller players could only search controller players, and then that's the end of it. I think that would be much, much better, regardless if they're on Xbox or PC. The only thing that I think that this is going to do is hurt the community, because you're going to start all of these segmented communities, really. There are going to be players who are only going to be on Xbox. Maybe they toggle this on accident. You're going to get longer matchmaking times no matter if you opt out of this or not, because people who are going to opt out of this, they're going to be in a separate player pool, and that's less people for you, if you haven't opted out of, to search for. I don't know. I just don't understand at all why they did this. I think this is a giant L, and I hope that they revert this. Or, again, make this cross-input opt out of, not cross-network. It's a big difference. I think it's a major problem. I don't know why they did this. We're going to move on. Actually, when I said we're going to move on, that's kind of the end of it, because they said they're investigating issues. There's actually a page. I can put this in here in the description as well. They updated this page as of today, 18 minutes ago, is recording this, September 13th, of what they're tracking, meaning like these are some issues that they're going to fix in the near future, or maybe some more investigative things. You can take a look at this. There's a lot of issues that they're looking at, which is good. I think that that's important. So the game's only going to get better over time. Nonetheless, that was a lot. This was the first patch for Age of Mythology Retold. Love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think it's too much? Is it not enough? Did your favorite Civ get nerfed into the ground? I'm surprised they didn't touch Centaurs, because I think Centaurs are broken right now, but maybe they will in a future patch. I don't know. If this is your first time on the channel, we love AOM Retold, and we're posting videos about it daily, so check out the channel for that. And if you're new to AOM Retold, there's also a guide playlist to get started and be most effective in this great new game. That's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you, James.